This program is brought to you by Pussy Magnets.
Put a midge on your friend with a pussy magnet.
Welcome, my lovely lumps. Or should I say lovely labs? I'm so thrilled to have you here in the Labia Lounge to yarn about all things sexuality, womanhood, holistic health, and everything in between. Your legs. Can never help myself. Anyway, we're going to have vag loads of real chats with real people about real shit. So buckle up. You're about to receive the sex ed that you never had and have a bloody good laugh while you're at it. Before we get stuck in, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording this, the Menang people. It's an absolute privilege to be living and creating dope podcast content on Noongar country, and I pay respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. Now, if you're all ready, let's flap and do this. Oh God, is there such thing as too many vagina jokes in the one intro? Whatever, I'm leaving it in. It's my podcast.
Don't panic, you're not broken. Your sex education was a piece of shit. Get your flaps out and pull up the couch. It's the Labia Lounge.
Hey all you labial legends, welcome back. I've got a special guest today, back by popular demand. Manu actually came and sat on the Labia Lounge with me at Comfort Creek, the little festival that I did the live recordings at, and had a chat with me. And I've had several people contact me and be like, oh my gosh, who is that like Italian man, that like intimacy coach? Like I loved what he was speaking about. And yeah, people are like fucking getting their panties wet over you at the moment, Manu. So I thought I'd just welcome you back and we could do a full episode. How are you going?
That was fun. I'm great. I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's it's a pleasure for me.
Yeah, no sweat. Well, I'll do a little intro to you so people can have a bit of context about who you are and your background, and then we'll just launch in because I want to chat about intimacy, masculinity. I know you work predominantly with men as an intimacy coach. So yeah, keen to pick your brains about some things in that department. So I'm going to try and do my best Italian pronunciation of your name. Manuele Paradiso is an intimacy coach working one-on-one with individuals and couples. His academic background in communication and semiotics broadened his horizons, but travel and transformative experiences truly shifted his outlook. Integrating intellect, spirituality, and sexuality has been a significant personal journey for him, involving much exploration of diverse spiritual communities and delving into esoteric subjects and psychology. His mission today is to guide and inspire people, especially men, on the path of conscious growth through deep intimacy and authentic relating. His offerings include online courses, coaching, play shops, retreats, and facilitation at events internationally. Dope! Welcome back. I'm so stoked to have you, and I guess the first port of call would be like, we're going to be talking a lot about intimacy, and I think people have different ideas of what this is, different definitions. What is your kind of personal and professional definition of true intimacy?
That's a great question. And I think it's important to keep reflect on this question. Also for me to keep talking about this. So, of course, during the years, my definition of intimacy has shifted a lot. And before I think this is a common pattern where I believe that many people see intimacy as strictly connected to the sphere of sexuality. At least I was one of them. And nowadays I see that as very different. I see like the sphere of sexuality is inside the sphere of intimacy. So the sphere of intimacy is a much larger sphere. And also that during the years that I matured this point of view, I also understood how before, since I was connecting the two, intimacy and sexuality, like almost synonyms, I understood that I was looking for intimacy into sexuality, right?
Mm.
And nowadays I see that intimacy is something, as I said, bigger. So it's like a connection between my most authentic part of me with the most authentic part of another person. If we talk about intimacy between two people, because then there is even a much larger perspective that I embrace today, where I can mention after, but limiting now about two people, that's so what I believe it is. So from my heart, let's say, to another person's heart, as much authentic as possible, and that it start to be an intimate connection. The masks are off, sort of, and we meet in our true self. Then this kind of relationship, I can have it not necessarily just with a person. I can have intimacy within myself. And this is actually another discovery. I understood that. Let me shift the definition of intimacy. That intimacy, it's a word that comes from the Latin intimus. It means from within. So from within, I connect. Within myself, I find intimacy. Intimus, inside me. So I understood that in order to create true intimacy, with someone, I need first to be able to find that intimacy within myself. And what does that mean? It means knowing myself, right? Know yourself, right? That's a very classic philosophical pillar on the inner work. And yeah, so I would say, to reformulate again the answer, I would say that intimacy, it's the most authentic relationship possible that we can have with ourselves, that allow us then to have the most authentic relationship possible with another person, or with our environment, or with the universe. Some people call it God or life, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. I think it's like it's often conflated with sex and sexuality. Like people kind of think intimacy and sex are the same thing, or they have to go hand in hand. And this is, really misguided. And I think a lot of sex or sexual expression is completely devoid of intimacy. And that's why a lot of people are out here having shit sex. And it's just sad to me that intimacy is something that we need coaches for. But yeah, I think these days it's not something that comes as naturally to a lot of people. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on why intimacy can be really difficult for people, or what common barriers you see to intimacy, in maybe your clients that come to you for help with this. Like, what is getting in the way? Why do they find intimacy difficult? What are the barriers?
Yeah, that's another important question. And so there are all the masks, or everything that it's in the middle between me and the most authentic expression of myself. It's in the middle of intimacy, for the definition I gave it before, right? So what's in the middle? The question I can begin with, what's in the middle between me and the most authentic self? First, I would say immediately my beliefs. Already believing that there is nothing in the middle, that's already a big thing in the middle. If anyone here listening thinks that there is nothing in the middle between them and their most authentic self, so there is a huge elephant that they don't want to see. That's a big sign, because not even the most enlightened teacher, I heard him say that is completely completely free from the ego games and their distorted personalities. So that's one thing, and I think it's a very important point, because that's why it's difficult. I found it difficult to work with men, because I found there is often in men the assumption that they're really good in intimacy. They have nothing to learn from anyone, especially from another guy, and they have just very positive feedback, and they trust that feedback because it's very convenient to trust that feedback without considering that the other person have good reason to lie. And we can talk about that also. And so this is one thing, our beliefs. And the belief that we are perfect, that we are done, is a big thing in the middle into intimacy. Then our masks, our conditioning from our family, from our culture, from the moment in history where we are. These are big things that are in the middle with the most authentic expression of ourselves, right? So I will say more like if you have a specific thing to point out, but this is generically what I will point out.
Yeah, I think like a real discomfort with vulnerability and I guess like an inability to access our own authenticity. Those are some things I feel like are commonly getting in the way of true intimacy, and like not really seeing it role modeled anywhere in a healthy way, you know, thinking that vulnerability equates to weakness or, you know, something to be ashamed of and try to hide. So like that's sort of discomfort with showing the deeper, more vulnerable layers of ourselves, I guess, comes from like, insecurities, feeling the need to appear a certain way and, like you said, have these masks and curate people's experience of us, like basically trying to control how people see us and therefore not show vulnerability. Like I think if we stopped trying to control how people saw us and what they thought about us, and we actually just allowed, you know, some of those masks to drop and to show more of a full spectrum of ourselves, like not just the happy, sunny, fair weather parts of ourselves, but the more deep, dark shadow sides or the vulnerable sides, or when we're in a really sad mood or we're irritable or grumpy or whatever, like just allowing people into that inner sanctum where they can see us as our authentic selves in all of the different, you know, expressions of that. I feel like that fosters intimacy and it fosters like safety and trust. But so many people are very uncomfortable with that and don't think that they're going to be accepted. And because we so desperately want to belong and, you know, so evolutionarily, like we needed to belong, otherwise we'd be ostracized and our survival would be at stake. We do everything we can, mostly like subconsciously, to try to belong and to try to be accepted. And so in our society, that's like, especially I think towards men, trying to tell us that vulnerability is weakness and we don't want to show weakness or people won't love us or find us attractive or we're not worthy. Yeah, like it makes sense that we're kind of, I guess, hiding these parts of ourselves and not feeling safe enough or comfortable enough about those aspects of our character to let anyone see them or to share them with people. Would you kind of agree with that?
That was a big wrap. Thank you. We are opening the chapter of vulnerability. I thank you for that. Yeah, let's go there. So that was implicit. I agree with you. Let's begin with that. I agree totally with what you said. And there is so much to add. So that was implicit in what already said, right? Because we need to access our own vulnerability if we want to be honest with ourselves, if we want to uncover our masks, if we want to be able to be the first to see our own shadows, what's beneath, what's behind, what we cover our face with, right? Our behaviors with, behind our conditioning. So there is all sorts of things that are repressed by our conditioning, by our fears, by our beliefs that are there, that will not get out. And it's painful to look at that. It's painful because often are things that are not, we believe that are not accepted out there by our family, by our partner or potential partners, by our friends, brothers and sisters. But first of all, it's just we, of course, don't accept that because we project that non-acceptance outside. So we don't accept that side of us. So in order to go there and feel that very uncomfortable sensation of, oh, this is who am I, which is not true. We are much more and we are a mystery, but we need to go even into that thing like, oh, I am like that. I am, I don't know, whatever part of us we reject, go through that acceptance. It's very, very uncomfortable. So yes, that's require the need to feel vulnerable. And this is something that not only there is this big, clear discussion about men's vulnerability, how men should be more vulnerable, how women are more used to be vulnerable. Yes, this is a common narrative, but I don't agree completely with that. I believe that nowadays even women are in the same way than men had been educated for a long time. Like, don't show yourself vulnerable, and only in certain contexts, only for certain reasons, especially due to the business approach. Like,
the boss bitch culture.
Right.
Totally. We've got to play by the men's rules, and oh my God, absolutely.
So that goes not only for men, but also for women. And at the same time, there is more and more discussion open publicly about that, addressed to men. So there is more and more awareness about that, of course. But I was reflecting about this a few days ago on the connection between vulnerability and intimacy, and connect to men. And what came on top of this what came to me on top of this is that the reason I believe that the reason why men don't want to work on their own sexuality and their own, like the sexual aspects of their intimacy, often, it's because it's the most vulnerable part of them. Why? Many men are seeking, again, intimacy through sexuality. And they're living that on a way that that it's pleasant for them. At least they believe it's pleasant, because they don't, maybe have experienced different ways, and we can go there also. But so sexuality is a way where they can receive pleasure, and they can discharge their tensions through the direct physical activity, but especially through the ejaculation. So therefore becomes something like, I need intimacy, and there is a inner need, which is maybe not obvious consciously to many men. Therefore, I need sexual contact with someone. And there are many talks about, like, from sex workers, that they can confirm that how many men they pay them just to talk.
Yeah.
Right? Not without having sex, because they feel they have no intimacy. And so there are many men that they do this equation, and then it should be pleasant. And the pleasure comes from also my discharge of all these tensions that is still connected from my not living my authentic life. So I use sex as a way to discharge this tension, take this pleasure, feel good, and move on. Had I been clear enough? What do you think?
Yeah, totally. Like, there's lots of things in what you just said. I feel like it's challenging for all genders, I think, just because we don't have like a lot of healthy kind of blueprints or framework for intimacy and vulnerability. But I definitely feel like I notice a lot with men, like it's extra challenging because like it's almost like we've all bought into this narrative that like men don't need intimacy as much as women or whatever, but like they absolutely do, and they yearn for intimacy, but they probably, whether they realize it or not, really need that, but just don't have, I guess, like as much of an idea about how to have a healthy outlet for that. And so for them, like intimacy, like their intimacy needs, they'll often like get that from sexual settings, which is, you know, why like even the men that come and see sex workers and don't have sex, like it's still within the context of like this is a sexual service, but actually what they're after is intimacy. So they're like, oh, we don't need to have sex, I just want the girlfriend experience, or I just want some company or some eye contact or some touch, and they want a safe space, and they think the only safe space where they can actually get those intimacy needs met, you know, is in that sexual context, which is really fucking sad because there's so many other ways of feeling, you know, and expressing and exploring intimacy and receiving that beautiful kind of reciprocal energetic exchange that is, you know, being intimate with people. And it doesn't have to be, it can be platonic, it doesn't have to be sexual. So yeah, I feel you on that. And I think like then there's this other, I know this is something that you talk about, there's this other tricky thing that men in particular really struggle to find a balance with, which is like their really primal sexual kind of wild urges with more like intentional, you know, expression of intimacy that's very kind of conscious and it's like, yeah, it's a tricky thing to balance and to find a place where you still get to like, you know, be in that like primal, wild, animalistic energy of like sexual urges and whatever. But yeah, I guess in a way that's not disconnecting you from the other person or from, I guess, creating a space where you're able to be vulnerable as well. Like, what do you think? That was really poorly phrased, but do you kind of know what I mean? Like, how do you find a place where you can explore both? Yeah.
That's a good direction. We don't have education on that, right? We are all right. Otherwise, you would not have doing probably even this podcast. I mean, your own podcast, right? So we don't know, and everything we know is through. Well, that's a kind of cliche to say, but it's like this: everything we know is through like very distorted information and third, fourth hand information and education, which is not really real around the sphere of sexuality, right? So we agree with that. So as a man, I grew up in a culture where, like, you know, all I have to do is like to be attractive to women, go chase the women, find the woman that has, like, can, agree to have a sex with me basically and have sex. And that was coming kind of very intuitive for a bunch of movies I saw and tales from other friends. And that's it. Nothing, not so much. And then maybe rely on some feedback, which were never really, nowadays I discovered they were not really, I didn't receive much real good feedback. So there we go. So that's the way I touch myself, because I learn to touch myself in that way. So that's the way I take pleasure. So that's the way I can have pleasure with another person, by this friction in my genitals and focusing on in my ejaculation. And if you have some common sense as a man, you wait first for her orgasm, and then you finally can have your. That's the basic education that we grew up with. The problem is that, as you know and as you share, it's so much vast, and so sex, it's something that can be explored in many different ways, right? Especially the energy, this primordial energy you're talking about. We need spaces where people can can facilitate us to feel these different ways where we can move our energy, where we can play our energy. And we need these spaces where we can interact and learn how to interact with other people from that energy, which doesn't have to be necessarily a sexual connection, but feeling our sexual energy, feeling that our sexual energy, it's not necessarily connected to our genitals, feeling that our sexual energy is not necessarily something that needs a sexual outcome. And this is already something we are going already in a field that is very weird for many people, even to listen to this. And also, especially for men, we need to see that, we need to learn that sex is not about orgasm, sex is not about ejaculation. And finally, one of my biggest points in my sexual life, my biggest shift is like to stop to chase for the ejaculation, for my own ejaculation as the peak of my pleasure. So detach my pleasure from the ejaculation. They get away from the obsession of ejaculation. And there are all sort of practices and all sort of way to live that can lead to finally have a much larger horizon, much larger view and experience in the sexual sphere. Yeah, so I wanna drop it here, but there's so much we can expand from this.
Totally. Yeah, it's a big topic. I'd love to do the segment Get Pregnant and Die.
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die.
Don't have sex in the missionary position. Don't have sex standing up. Just don't do it. Promise?
So, do you have a story about your sex education, maybe back in school, or maybe your parents, giving you the talk? Tell me a bit about your sex ed and like where it failed you or maybe where it did a great job.
Hey, Babe Towns. So sorry to interrupt, but I simply had to pop my head into the lounge here and mention another virtual lounge that you've got to get around. It's the Labia Lounge Facebook group that I've created for listeners of the potty to mingle in. And there you'll find extra bits and bobs like freebies or discounts for offerings from guests who've been interviewed on the podcast, inspiring and thought-provoking conversations, and support from a community of labial legends. I also have an account on the fab new app Sunroom, which is a platform created by women for women and non-binary folk, and where there's no shadow banning or censorship of sex-positive content, unlike with the other platforms that I'm on. So you can hit up my Sunroom for extra content and real and raw life updates, because I'll be sharing on there from now on all of the stuff that I can't post anywhere else. My vision for both of these is that they become really supportive, educational, and hilarious resources for you to have more access to me and a safe space to ask questions that you can't ask anywhere else. So head over to the links in the show notes and I'll hopefully see you in there. And now, back to the episode.
Yeah, there are different things. So one of the things that is coming along with what we just said is that it's quite this is quite obvious, but it's worth to mention. And yeah, because I as all men and all people, I receive as all men, I receive the education that I need to ejaculate, and I need to wait for the other person orgasm, and I need to have an orgasm myself. This is the education I received. And as I already mentioned, the highest form of education from that point of view was like really be able to wait for her but wait for her orgasm. And when she finally has her orgasm, that's good. And then you can have your own ejaculation. But then there was a point in my life where I was with this woman and she told me, hey, calm down. It's not about the orgasm. Like she was feeling my work, my physical work on trying to make her come. It was our first encounter. And she was like, hey, like that, it's okay. Don't try. There is nothing you need to try. And that moment, this very simple phrase, in that moment, was kind of, I finally heard something in the right moment, and it blew my mind. And I said, what? Wait. Because I already heard that, but I didn't click anything before. But in that moment, from that person,
yeah,
and in my path, I was hearing that it clicked, and I felt, what? Are you saying that you're okay if I not try to make? And I said, no, you don't need to make me anything. Like, I want you here, present. So I understood that I was out of my presence on trying to make her, let's say, what was in my eyes a favor. And also, if you want to say, I mean, add more, like for my ego, also like feeling good for my ego because I made her come. Like, no, nowadays it's like, no, that's not how it works. I'm not making anyone coming. I may help and support her to have an orgasm, but like, and it's not for my ego. And that's not even the goal. Otherwise we are, detached from each other. And then there is a lack of intimacy. Then there is no intimacy anymore because we are not connected with each other. We are connected with an idea, with a goal that we need to chase.
Yeah. As soon as it becomes goal oriented, intimacy kind of goes out the window because your focus is not on fostering deeper connection and intimacy. It's about making this end result happen. But that's so interesting that you had like this like permeating, I guess, I mean, I don't know where you got this sex education that like you have to wait for her to come or make sure she comes first before you do, but like I'm pretty sure Aussie dudes did not get that message. It's like, you know, it's all about the ejaculation and sex isn't over until he comes, and the female orgasm is kind of like, you know, a bonus if it happens, but honestly it's like very rarely expected to even happen. And there's like a lot of men up in here that don't prescribe to that, especially like young men. So it's like, I know it's still misguided that like orgasm is the goal and the focus, like with, you know, even if it is the woman, but it's like at least a little bit more evolved than like the boys I grew up with who like probably didn't even fucking think that a female orgasm actually existed, nor did it matter or take priority. It was all about like their pleasure and them just like getting their end in and busting a nut. It's just like a whole lot of Aussie slang. Sorry. You
got some emotions there.
It's I feel like in my mind, because I work with women and I hear a lot about how their pleasure does not take priority in a lot of like hetero kind of relationships. In my mind, at least, that's like an improvement, that like you were trained or conditioned to like care about the woman's orgasm, but then it's still just like, it still sucks because it's just putting something on this pedestal, it's making it a goal. And then of course, like even, you know, the men that prescribe to that and are like, she comes first, you know, I got to make sure she has an orgasm. Most of the time that's not because they're actually invested in her pleasure and well-being and they want to create like this beautiful shared experience of orgasmic energy and intimacy. It's because their ego is attached to like whether or not they can make her come, and they think that to be a man and a good lover, they have to make her come. And so like their goal of making her come just puts all of this pressure on her and him, and, you know, all these expectations on the situation. And so of course that's just distracting us from like what the true purpose of lovemaking should be, which is intimacy and connection and just pleasure, rather than this goal of like, all right, like she's got to have an orgasm, then I'm going to ejaculate, and then sex is over and we've done the thing and we've ticked the boxes, you know?
Yeah. I believe nowadays that to be a good lover, and that goes for men and women, any gender, we need to be able to make love or have sex, we want to call it, without having an orgasm. Both. If we are able to stay on that without having an orgasm, we can say that we are in the path to be like great lovers. So if we detach from that need and that urge, and this goes also for women. So I hear you what you say, and you're right. It would be already enough. It were not enough, but it were already good if these people you're referring to, this kind of men they're referring to, they could at least wait. If it's about their orgasm, at least have a more like empathetic mentality or like another more altruistic approach. Yes, and it's as you said, and from there is so much to grow, because it was like this also for me before. I can relate with this man like, that you're talking about. At the same time, I have a question for you. Do these women that you're talking about are talking to their partner in a way that they let him understand what's not really working for them? Because I had to wait many years before and many different encounters before a woman told me that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of the time, no, they don't have the confidence or the communication skills. They don't realize that they can just have a conversation because it's so charged. It's like anything to do with sexuality is often, especially with people that come to work with me, is often incredibly confronting and triggering. There might be trauma there might be negative conditioning and a lot of shame. And like a really common one is like the women have tried to bring it up and the men don't know how to receive that feedback or guidance around, what the woman needs more of. And that triggers all of their inferiority and their insecurities, and they're like, it dents their ego, it bruises their kind of view of themselves as this stud in the sack and this like, amazing masculine lover. And so they don't handle that conversation well. And so the woman's like, oh shit, I'm not bringing that up again, because it can go, one of two ways when people react badly to a woman being like, hey, by the way, like, I'd like to approach this differently because I'm not really enjoying this. They either get really fucking sad, sore feelings, and they can't get an erection, they get really insecure, or they start being like, oh, well, you're too needy and you're demanding too much and you're broken and it works for all the other women I've been with and it must just be your pussy that's like not performing. It's not me. Like, I'm a good lover. And so they get really defensive. And not always, but like that is a very common thing that I hear.
Okay,
because, like,
I have a point here.
None of us have the skills.
I have a point here because this is a discussion that I heard many times. And I like to, when things get said many times in the same way, I like to challenge it with try to give a shift,
play
a
devil's
twist
advocate.
to that. Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah, no, I not want to really play devil's advocate in this case because I not want to defend man, the category of man. That's like,
Okay.
That's not the point.
Reframe it for me.
So how I want to reframe it is that there are, in the way you are framing it, you are assuming that the woman, I hearing that you are implicitly assuming that the woman is handling that communication in the best way possible. Her.
Oh, no, I'm
Right?
not. That's what I'm saying. The women don't have the communication skills either. Like,
so exactly. So we need to get to talk about that, and not necessarily just me and you, like in general, more talk on, less blame on men. Okay, point out this is very important to keep point out what you say, and it's important, but it's important to see that be cautious on not developing a blaming culture of, oh, men can't handle that, and that's why women. And then we go again in the triangle, in the dualism of victim perpetuator, and the men say, no, it's you. No, let's assume that nobody's here is able to bring that subject in the best way possible. Because even there, we are lacking education on communication. And this is, I think, one of the most overlooked thing when we talk about intimacy, because we talk a lot about education of our bodies, our pleasure, and communicate boundaries. But what about communicate in general? There is a big void connected to intimacy. That's what I'm hearing. Because either we talk about communication in general, like not connected to intimacy, either like a specific thing that we need to learn to connect to intimacy, which again, it's boundaries and maybe desires, pleasures, fears. But how to actually handle that conversation, how to actually hold that space, not many people are giving too much importance to that. And are you referring to tools like nonviolent communication, for example? Like bringing nonviolent communication in the sex talk or the intimacy, right? It can people just learning how to use these tools can have a revolution, just the way, because how many times I witness myself, but also in my family from a kid, like my mother say something to my father in a way and he got triggered and she was, or vice versa. And then looks like, oh, they have a different character. But nowadays, when I hear that, it's like, no, they just don't have the tools how to proper ask even a question. Just because someone thinks that has the right to ask a question, to show it and feels in the right position, doesn't make them the best communicator possible by default. Often is the opposite, because in the case, for example, we can mention a case where a woman feels like, okay, I got it. Now I need to tell him the truth. But that truth comes, if she's not aware, comes with such an emotional charge, but even if she can say, yeah, but I said it in the most nice, sweet way possible, like, hey, honey. But even just your beliefs that are behind can give a different energy to the words you're communicating in that moment. It's not only the word you're using and the tone you're using, it's actually the beliefs you have around that talk. So if you're already blaming the man and you are trying to convey a discussion that seems like you're not blaming him, but if inside you are blaming him, that will be perceived by the other person, even if you're using the most beautiful words and compliments. And this already, it's a bad beginning for any kind of discussion.
Oh my God, like we're completely set up for failure because, we all struggle and don't have like the best communication skills in general. We also struggle with like sex and shame and conditioning and lack of education. And then when you bring communication and sex together, that is just such a disaster zone for most people. Like it's already so triggering, so charged, such a delicate area, attached to so many insecurities. And, when you then try to get someone to actually approach a conversation around that with all of that already there in the background, and they don't even have communication or conflict resolution skills or any of that. It's like, it's a total shit show. And I mean, I feel like I'm a broken record with this on the podcast. Probably like every second episode I'm harping on about like communication is literally the most important thing, the key. It's what
communication is sexy.
Find myself like, yeah, I literally, like, people come to me to work on all sorts of other stuff. We always come back to communication, because when I distill it down to like the biggest thing that would actually shift the needle for whatever they're struggling with, it's generally communication based, or that's like a big kind of linchpin that will help everything else. And I've got like a workshop on that. I put in a module in my online course. Like communication is the fucking thing, and communication about sex and in sex, oh my God, so important. And it's just so difficult for like almost everyone you speak to. Like it's amazing how challenging people find it, but it makes sense, right? Like, of course it is, like with like the complete lack of education, lack of healthy modeling of that being done. Like, we don't see it. We see like very, very, very unhealthy examples of this in like TV shows and movies and from our parents. Like, where do we see that being done well? Like, fucking nowhere. And then there's all the subconscious beliefs that we all have from our conditioning, like you were talking about. So like, yeah, we're up against a lot in that department. I definitely don't think like, you know, one gender is worse at it than others. Like, we're all struggling and have our own sets of challenges with that. And often like the thing that's such a shame, because I work a lot with like hetero people in heterosexual relationships, is like the man and the woman have their own set of difficulties and challenges and insecurities, and they're like perfectly matched to trigger one another in like the worst way. So like they've got like opposite kind of, yeah, it's pretty
But that's
tough.
how it
But
goes.
anyway, yeah.
That's
We've got a bit
how
off
that's
track.
how attraction goes.
Excuse the interruption, my loves, but I'm shamelessly seeking reviews and 5-star ratings for the potty because, as I'm sure you've noticed by now, it's pretty fab. And the more people who get to hear it, the more people it can help. Reviews and ratings help me curry favour with the algorithmic gods and get suggested to other listeners to check out. Plus, they make me feel really good and appreciated as I continue to pour my heart and soul into creating this baby for you. And I promise I don't mazz over them or anything. I mostly just tuck them away for a rainy day when I'm filled with self-doubt and existential dread about being self-employed, which is fairly frequently. So you see, leaving a review really does make a difference, and it's an easy little act of support that you can take in just a minute or two by either going to Spotify and leaving 5 stars for the show, or writing a written review and leaving 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts. Choose your poison, or if you're a real overachiever, you could do both. Whoa now. If you are writing a review though, just be sure to only use G-rated words because despite the fact that this is a podcast about sexuality, words like sex can be censored and your review won't actually show up. Lame. Anyway, oh, what was that? Oh, you're going to go do it right now while I wait. Okay. Yeah. No, that's a great idea. May as well just quickly click that 5-star button before we get on with it and, you know, like forget about it and get on with your day. I'm hearing them roll in. I'm hearing those 5 stars. Oh my God, I make myself cringe. Anyway, thank you muchly. You're a total gem, and I'll let you get back to the episode now.
So let's talk about the forms of intimacy because, yeah, we've been quite like vague, I suppose, talking about it as like a concept and the energy, like the kind of intimacy. But I'd love to talk about like ways that we can express intimacy, you know, touch, eye contact, verbal. So like through communicating that fosters more safety and intimacy. Like, what are some really great ways if people are like, oh, I don't know how to like be more intimate with my partner or open up a space of more intimacy? Like, what are some steps? What are some things I can do? Like, what do you reckon your favorite ways to cultivate intimacy with a partner?
Yeah, there are different tools, right? And one that came now straight away was an experience I proposed to, was not like a romantic partner, but a partner I'm very intimate with. And I mean, someone who had his history, so it was not occasional. And we had also sexual history and what we both perceive as authentic intimacy. So just to give a little frame. And so it came to me like she was coming to visit me from another country, and I asked her, I have this idea. When we meet, because we will meet only, we had to meet only for like 4 or 5 days. From the moment I come to pick you up, we are in silence. We don't talk. We stay with each other in the car, in the house, and we set a frame like this, like, because it was winter, was snowy, and so we know we were inside the house for 3 days, the two of us, and that's it, isolated in nature. Say, the morning we wake up and we do our own routines, and at 10 a.m. we set up a space where we meditate together for 20, 30 minutes. After that meditation, we open up the sharing and we can talk. And we wait, no, for each other, like one share, finish, the other person share, finish, and then we can answer to each other. And when we feel that the sharing is enough, without going in chit chat, but sharing from an emotional point of view, how I'm feeling, what's moving inside me, without going too much in stories. When that is finished, we go back in silence and we keep living this shared space in silence and let our bodies communicate with each other. I think here there is a big tool for approaching intimacy is create space, deliberate space of silence, non-verbal spaces, because the words are talking again about communication. It's not only about verbal communication, and we cover so much our communication with words, we forget even are we able to stay comfortably in silence with this person. Let's begin from really basic things. Are we able to eat in silence and looking each other in the eyes in silence, smiling to each other in silence, touch, dare to initiate a touch, sweet, kind touch in silence, and without thinking that, oh, but now I feel the urge, for example, to have a sexual contact, should I talk about, but trust that maybe it will not happen, or maybe it will happen, but trust that without words, things will go in their own way, and allow yourself also, to mistake in front of the other person. But again, a non-verbal space can be a super powerful tool. And if we feel that we are not comfortable with that, well, we already get the answer. It means we need to work on it. So there you have a space to keep trying to reproduce. Maybe it doesn't have to be 3-4 days in that way as I did, but it can be even half a day. It can be a whole day. And not to be just in your own mind space while you're in silence, but sharing the space, sharing the touch, sharing the cuddle, being present, of course, because many people think silence then just it's about not having words, but you can be in silence and not be in silence because you're having so much words in the mind going on and thinking about totally different things not related to the moment. So what I'm saying here is a mindful approach, right, to intimacy. Mm. Meditation is a good tool to train on this by ourselves, but ultimately it's bringing that meditation with open eyes in movement with another person. Mm. And that is, can be a powerful, intimate field.
Mm. Yeah, beautiful. I guess I work with a lot of people that are, in marriages, they have kids, they have busy lives. They don't necessarily have the luxury, or they're not in that place where they're gonna, have these big kind of silent periods and meditate together and all this beautiful stuff. Obviously amazing, but I usually like to also try to offer very, very easy, accessible little kind of tips or suggestions. Yeah. People that are just look, that's not within my reach. That's not really where I'm at right now. And a lot of the people I work with say things like, there's not a lot of intimacy in the marriage, and it's been squeezed out more and more because when, he, for example, comes up to me and gives me a little squeeze or a kiss or something, or if we're in bed and he starts touching me, I immediately feel as though, oh shit, if I engage in this, it's going to move towards sex, and he's only touching me or kissing me because he wants sex. Yeah. And because, there's this, very commonly sex and intimacy are conflated, I was mentioning, there's this expectation there, and that puts her off because she's oh, I wouldn't mind a bit of affection and intimacy, but I can't be fucked having sex right now. And so I'm not even going to engage, and I'm going to kind of shut that down. And so, she'll shut down that bid for intimacy. And then it becomes less and less frequent. So I'm just wondering, like, what are some really practical tips for people in this sort of situation where they can explore or just tap into like little moments of intimacy throughout their busy day and, you know, while they're being parents and working and whatever, that create more safety, connection, intimacy without,
Yes.
I guess, the expectation. Yeah.
Yeah, especially at the end of the day, for the kind of which is a common person, right? All the day out, and then finally meet your partner at the end of the day, especially if they live together. That it's a very important thing. Like, one big tip I can give to men specifically, but this, on the other hand, touch also women. It's like, first, have your own. When you come back home, have your own cave time. Doesn't have to be big. It can be 30 minutes. And communicate this to your partner, giving the specific minutes you will have your cave time, and stick to that. It means, like, if you say 30 minutes, you show up after 30 minutes. And say to your partner, hey, dear honey, whatever you want to call her, and I need now some time for me, in order to one moment decompress and be more present with you afterward, in order to be better present. So this is, it sounds not connected, but we come back again to the origin of intimacy from within. Have your own intimate time. And that decompression moment, that cave time, can be also really dumb thing. Zapping in television, scrolling, read a book, meditate, relaxing, take a shower, whatever you want, but it's just you with yourself, to just turn off the mind, go in the zero mind that many men really are craving. When you come back from there, go back to your partner and hold the space for her to ask her questions about her day, and active listening without comments, but maybe with more questions, and how that made you feel. How was your day? How was other? And really listen, instead of and thinking about, I wonder what my soccer team did scored last night. No. Active listening, and show that you're listening by even making more questions, and how that, about emotions, and how that made you feel, and what happened afterward. And so help her to liberate, through talk, her emotions. Now, that may sound a cliche of the man in the cave and the woman that needs to talk, but for the most part of the couples, it works. And while you hold that space, you may want to touch her in a non-sexual way, just, giving, maybe gently caressing her leg, or a little pressure in her feet, like give her touch, like non-sexual touch, like a present hand, nice pressure, touching while asking the question. It can be so nice for her, and so nice for you, because you will feel that she will be open and more. And from there, then you can also just give more focus also when she's done with her sharing, keep touching her in a non-sexual way, around the body, not in the genitals, like the shoulders, the neck, which someone can think cuddling, but doesn't have to be even a cuddling, even kind of a neither a professional massage, but touch, communicate through touch. And just these few things already are setting the space for her feeling that, okay, he's not asking for sex, it's just it's not taking through his touch, it's giving presence, it's giving comfort, and he's giving his presence. And the partner can feel open more. And eventually this, whatever, can lead, if there is the feeling to intimacy, sexual intimacy or not, but already there can be so much satisfaction from both of the partners there. And this is a strong foundation for intimacy, especially if done on a daily basis.
Totally. Yeah, I love that. Touch, so important. I think just like, you're saying active listening, I think just presence, like someone just giving you the gift of their total focus and presence and giving you eye contact and really like their whole body actively showing that they're listening and they're present with you. And then if you add some touch into that as well and some like thoughtful questions that show you care, like, fuck me, that's the recipe, So I'm wondering, like, because you work predominantly with men, and this can be a challenging area for men to kind of, I guess, feel safe and comfortable to express or receive intimacy, especially if it's non-sexual intimacy. What can a partner of a man do to create a more conducive environment for the man to feel inspired to be more consciously intimate?
What kind of partner? Again, I didn't get very well your question.
So, like, if you're a partner of a man, what can you do as the partner of the man to create an environment where that man feels more inspired to be intimate and be really conscious about that? Are there like things that create a sort of like encouraging space?
Yeah. I think already to have a talk, like to encourage him to have some like already to disengage from the judgment against him is a big thing, because some women can feel like, oh, but I'm not judging, but whatever, but really be honest, you can find any speck of judgment you have about his behavior and how he should be, any will to try to correct him, already refrain from that and see that this is you telling yourself that maybe you need to correct something, because it's the other way around always. Like if you, like Byron Katie says, if you think the other person needs to do the work, it means you need to do the work. And so already disengaging from that perspective, it's a big favor that you can do. And on a practical level, encouraging him, to take his time, but also to open a dialogue, I do believe in direct, communication, and open a dialogue if you feel, without letting him feel that he's wrong on anything, and taking responsibility for even your own limits, but open just a dialogue, clear communication. There is no need to have a big tricks or hacks on how can I make him go in that direction. It's already starting wrong if you want to make him go in a direction. Just open a dialogue and just try to understand from a most heartful way how to communicate that, and say, hey, I would like to talk about something, and always refer not as because I think that I will feel better if you do this. It's like, I think that both we can grow and have both a better intimacy, and both, have a more pleasure, not referring to the shortcoming of one, because that's never like that. Even when it looks so obvious, it's never like that. So we need to consider always that we are in two, even when it's the most wrong attitude from the other person. Remember that you called that attitude in your life somehow. Get out of victim mentality, and neither also self-blame, and not even preaching to blame yourself, but just be like, okay, we are in two. If he's doing like this, there's probably something in me that is calling for that. And if I'm not aware of it, I will keep calling that in my life, with him or with someone else. So I think this is, so sorry if you expect a hack, a tip, practical, but I think this is a big, big thing that already can shift so much. Just shift that mind in that way. It can help the other person so much.
Totally. Thank you for that. So I'd love to do the segment TMI.
TMI, we love it. TMI, we love it.
Do you have a TMI story to share with us that might be usually considered a bit too much information for public conversation.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
This there are a couple, but that can also. So nowadays people say trigger warning, right? So that can be
Yep, totally.
triggering. Here is a trigger warning for men that are listening to me. And yeah, I'm thinking which one I pick, but okay, I go for the. Yeah, okay. So there was a moment when I was with a partner in the past where I was starting to exploring sexuality in a more conscious way. And so it came to me that, they were off inviting me to this play party. And for the people who don't know what a play party is, it's a setting where a group of people can be some few people to, I don't know, whatever, can be up to few tens of people, but there are not necessarily limits, decide to together explore sexuality in the most open and consensual and safe way possible. And to do that, there are all sort of exercise, warming up, and there is a lot of focus on boundaries and safe sex, and in be able to say no, yes, and to be able to express your own desires. So I went in one of these settings with my partner, and we were both open to together to explore other people eventually. And I knew she had the desire, because she told me, to see us in interaction with a friend of her, which was a man, which I knew, and I liked him as a person, a really beautiful person, beautiful soul, but was a man. And very feminine man in my eyes, but still a man. And she expressed a desire to see the three of us in interaction together. I mean, I was like, I don't think so. I don't know. Let's see. I didn't want to say no, because I wanted also, I was in this moment, okay, I want to be as open as possible. And there was a part of me wanted also to try to impress her. So when inside me, I felt like, no, this will not happen. But then there was a moment where finally, somehow, we were in the middle of this room with people around, and I was making out with my partner, and we were in lingerie, and she was in a beautiful, underwear, and he came under invitation from her, and I was okay with that, and we start to touch each other nicely. He started to make out with her after my consent, and then she came down on me, while me and him, we were touching each other's skin, not the genitals, just to be more explicit. She came down on me, and I was having pleasure from her. And then he, observing her, he asked me, Manu, do you mind if I join your partner on giving you pleasure? There, it's like one of these moments in the movies when there is this cut, this edit, everything froze, and and I hear the word froze, and I hear myself talking okay, Manu, here there is a fork. You either say, there is a fork in your life. You either say no, and your life keeps as smoothly as before. You don't put in question anything about your own sexuality or things, and you say no, and you are in a setting where you say no, everything is okay, and you will receive the no, so it's okay. On the other hand, you can say yes and try something that will provide you another experience and with the best person possible, because you like this person, you love this person, and it's not about attraction, and you will see what's coming up to you, and you will work with that.
Just let him
Well,
suck your dick. Come on.
I look at him. I say, dear, you are you're the best person who could do that because I love you. So yeah, please go on. And he went down and it was fun. It was fun. And I had a moment of embarrassment that went away immediately, feeling how turned on my partner was. And that turned me on, seeing her turn on. And in that moment, she came up and she whispered in my eyes for the first time, I love you. And it was such a big moment.
Wow.
So, and after we laughed about it, it was fun. And that's it. Nothing more happened, nothing more with this person. But he's a friend. And so, yeah, we shared about it. It was fun. And at the end, I had a beautiful feeling because I felt it didn't challenge my homophobic beliefs because that were already elaborated before. So I didn't feel it challenged my masculinity. Actually, for some reason that may sound weird to people, it actually reinforced my masculine identity, not by saying, oh, okay, I don't like this. No, because I even enjoyed it. But just the fact to allow myself to open with my partner to such a very, for me in that moment, extreme thing, and feel then no judgment from nobody, not my partner, nobody. And my partner for me was like, wow, so sexy, such a beautiful, powerful woman. And if she can be turned on by that, wow. So I still feel a man, and I didn't feel insecure at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. Good on you. I love that. That reminds me of an episode I did with an ex-partner of mine a while back. The episode's called I'm Straight and I Sucked a Dick because Matt, I'm still really good friends with him. He is pretty bloody straight. Like, I mean, you might argue, like, look, if you're fucking sucking dick, then there's got to be some queerness there. But, like, I would say he's, like, very straight. He's just always been kind of like, you know what? I mean, I'm curious. I feel like I'd be good at sucking a dick because I've got one. Like, may as well give it a go. And he's just so comfortable within himself and his kind of like sexuality that he's very open-minded. And so he found someone to explore that with, and he came on the podcast and talked all about it and like how that process was for him. And it's a really kind of similar feeling, I think, that you're describing of like it's almost reinforcing your masculinity and your sexuality and like your comfort with everything because you know that you can enjoy an experience like that without it, shaking your your kind of like, I guess, how you feel in your sexuality, and it triggering some kind of latent homophobia, So I think it must be so liberating, and feel very empowering. And that's obviously what your partner found incredibly sexy, was that you were open and it didn't need to bring up any like, oh, like no homo though, like I'm not gay though, like any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, highly recommend people go listen to I'm Straight and I Sucked a Dick. It's a great episode.
Hey, me again. If you'd like to support the potty and you've already given it 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening on, I want to mention that you can buy some really dope merch from the website and get yourself a Labia Lounge tote, tee, togs. Yep, you heard that right. I even have Labia Lounge bathers. Or a cute fanny pack if that'd blow your hair back. So if fashion isn't your passion, though, you can donate to my Buy Me a Coffee donation page, which is actually called Buy Me a Soy Chai Latte, because I'll be the first to admit I'm a bit of a Melbourne cafe tosser like that. And yes, that is my coffee order. You can do a once-off donation or an ongoing membership and sponsor me for as little as 3 fat ones a month. And I also have a Sunroom profile over on the Sunroom app, as I've mentioned. And I also offer one-on-one coaching and online courses that'll help you level up your sex life and relationship with yourself and others in a really big way. So every bit helps because it ain't cheap to put out a sweet podcast into the world every week out of my own pocket. So I will be undyingly grateful if you support me and my biz financially in any of these ways. And if you like, I'll even give you a mental BJ with my mind from the lounge itself. Saucy. I'll pop the links in the show notes. Thank you. Later.
I'm just looking at the time. I've gone way over. I've got to rush off because I have to get ready for a client. But you've got some courses that you're giving listeners 25% off. I'm going to put the links to those in the show notes and in the Labia Lounge Facebook group. Is there anything you want to leave us with or plug before we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, thank you, Freya. I think it's great to discuss with you. Many things are coming, and if I want to leave these episodes just saying the most important we can do for ourselves, and that goes for any domain of life, and it touched particularly also intimacy, sexuality, is in work in a heartful presence. Work in a heartful presence. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. Amazing. All right, my love. Well, thank you so much. Chat with you soon.
Bye, Freya.
And that's it, darling hearts. Thank you for stopping by the Labia Lounge. Your bum groove in the couch will be right where you left it, just waiting for you to sink back in for some more double L action next time. And in the meantime, if you'd be a dear and subscribe, share this episode, or leave a review on iTunes, then you can pat yourself on the snatch, because that, my dear, is a downright act of sex-positive feminist activism. And you'd be supporting my vision to educate, empower, demystify, and destigmatize with this here podcast. Also, I'm always open to feedback, topic ideas that you'd love to hear covered, or guest suggestions. So feel free to get in touch via my website at freyagraph.com or say hey over on Insta. My handle is Freya_graph_YMT, and I seriously hope you're following me on there, because damn, we have fun. We have fun. Anyway, later labial legends. I'll see you next time.